Okay, now that we've talked about different ways you can develop sentences, we're going to take it a step further. We've learned about modifiers. Now we're going to talk about how to add multiple modifiers to a base clause. So if we go back a bit, we learned about how to add a modifier to a base clause. We learned about how to add left branching modifiers and mid branching modifiers and right branching modifiers. So a cumulative sentence means it's accumulating more ideas. So it has multiple modifiers. And that's the big difference. So we've gone from adding. So to refresh your memory, we talked about 3 ways you can add modifiers. You can begin a modifier. You can have it be a participle, which means an ing verb. You can have it be an adjective or a possessive pronoun. So remember, modifiers work best when they modify the subject of the sentence. So find the subject of the sentence, and that's the thing you're modifying, because the subject of the sentence is always a noun. So find the subject and figure out what you want to say about it, what information you want to add, because that's really what we're doing with modifiers. We're adding information about the subject. So here's the base clause. The batter struck out. Pretty simple. So let's add one modifying phrase. Well, what's the first noun I want to modify? There's really only one noun in this sentence at all. It's batter. So both my modifiers will probably modify batter. So I'm going to add a mid-branching modifier to this sentence. The batter, stuck in a horrible slump, struck out. So we've got an adjective here to start this modifier, and it's modifying batter. So now let's add a right branching modifier. The batter, stuck in a horrible slump, struck out, swinging wildly at a breaking ball. So this, we've got a participle, ing, and it's modifying the batter too. So we've got 2 modifiers, one mid-branching, one right-branching, but both going after the same noun, which is the batter. Let's look at a new one. Base clause, my coffee is delicious. Again, we've only got one noun in this sentence to modify. So let's start, in this case, with a left-branching modifier. Adjectives again. Dark and rich, my coffee is delicious. So now, let's add another modifier. This time, let's add it at the end, but we're still going to be modifying coffee. Dark and rich, my coffee is delicious. Its warmth filling my soul with contentment. I don't even like coffee. But there is a possessive pronoun. Modifying, and it's referring back to coffee. So we've got 2 modifying phrases. Our next base clause. The bus drove by without dropping Rory off. True story, that happened today. Don't worry, we got her back. So we need to find nouns to modify. So we've got bus, we've got Rory, but really I'm probably going to focus on the bus. It's the subject of the sentence after all. So, mid-branching modifier. The bus, usually reliable and efficient. So adjective. We've got a little adverb here modifying the adjective, but the main things are the adjectives, so they both go back. They're modifying bus. And now I'll add a right branching modifier. The bus, usually reliable and efficient, drove by without dropping Rory off, leaving me very confused. So we've got a participle that goes back to bus. The bus is leaving me very confused. Everything goes back to the bus. Now, just because I was adding modifiers in the middle or the end or the beginning doesn't mean you can't add multiple modifiers in the same position. For example, here I added 2 right branching modifiers. The snow began to fall is our base clause. Here's one right branching modifier, adjectives. And here's a second right branching modifier. This one's a participle. So especially with right branching modifiers, you can kind of stack them so that they just keep going. I mean, you don't have to stop at 2 either. You could just keep going. It's harder with mid branching because then usually what you're doing is separating the subject of the sentence from the predicate of the sentence, because your mid branching modifier always goes after the subject. And if you have too many of them, then by the time the reader gets to the predicate, they've forgotten the subject. So you don't want to have a lot of mid-branching modifiers, but you can add multiple modifiers in the same position if you want to. So for instance, I added 2 left-branching modifiers here. Tired and hungry, adjectives. Rushing to beat traffic, participle. Kendall drove home. So both would go before the base clause. They're left branching. So you can put 2 left branching modifiers. In this case, I added a left branching and then a right branching. So her temper getting the best of her, Nellie elbowed the opposing player, knocking her to the ground. So we've got a possessive pronoun with her here. And we've got a participle here. And that's how you add multiple modifiers to a base clause. Mindeman out.